Hello and welcome to In Touch with Durham County. I'm Deborah Craig-Ray. As our regular viewers know, we use this show to interview our Durham County department heads, staff, and community partners to share important information about the many valuable programs and services. As you'll notice, I'm missing my co-host today, Chairman Michael Page. He's a bit under the weather, but I promise you he will join us next time. It's our pleasure to welcome back our County Manager, Wendell Davis, to the show. As you know, he recently announced a reorganization of the management structure of Durham County. We will hear from him exactly what that means as he continues to position the organization to address the emerging challenges associated with the anticipated growth of the county and service delivery. Mr. Davis, welcome back to the show, and thank you for making time for us today.
Deborah, thank you so much for having me back and taking time out of your busy schedule to get me on the show.
Well, we have a lot of questions in front of us, and you know you've been working very hard over the last 3 years trying to reshape our local government. Talk to us a little bit about that process, if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, it doesn't seem like it's been 3 years. It feels more like a couple of weeks, to be honest, because we have, in fact, been so busy. But, you know, when I came on board, we started this whole effort to begin to go through a change management process, and that has meant many things to many different employees. But for the most part, I think all of the change has subsequently been good. We're learning as we go, to get more specific, you know, we spent considerable time trying to make sure that we fashioned a strategy, an implementation strategy, should I say, for our strategic plan. And so that implementation strategy is complete. All of the staff understand, hopefully for the most part, what managing for results is at this point. And we're fastly moving through, again, getting all of our employees trained up in terms of how to get the program budgets done, they're developing the metrics, and we're in basically the last cohort of that work. And things are going pretty well, but again, it's a lot of new learning, and I think the employees, for the most part, are enjoying it.
Yes. Well, I remember one word that you used when you were on the show before you said that this work would take a lot of rigor. Mm-hmm. And I think if you talk to those of us who have been on this journey, we might echo that.
Yeah, it is indeed rigorous work, but again, I think that, as I said on one of our earlier shows, it's rigor that will in fact pay great dividends, provided that we have the stick-to-itness, and that's what it's essentially going to take, particularly as we try and tackle some of these very large challenges, these major social ills like poverty, and some of our educational challenges, along with, you know, some of the challenges we find with our youth, particularly around initiatives like the My Brother's Keeper work that we've been doing over the last year. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. Now, I know our goal today is to talk about the reorganization, and we're going to get there, but I think it's important to kind of remind people about the foundational work that you have done, sort of leading us up to that process.
So again, back in 2012, as you know, the board adopted their very first strategic plan. And at that time, I, of course, left and went off to higher education for a couple of 3 years, but we did not have an opportunity to, again, develop our implementation strategy. And so, as I said earlier, we've been working on our managing for results model. We have the model built. I've spent, along with a number of other staff, numerous hours trying to make sure that the knowledge transfer happens in respect to what managing for results means, and primarily those 4 quadrants that's in the model: planning, how we budget, how we manage in those processes, and more importantly, how we learn and evaluate for those things in order to make sure that through that cyclical process, we get better. And so we are there. Our customer service component that's at the base of the model, that is being led, of course, by Tammy Baggett and an internal group, and they're doing some great work in that space as well, and we hope that we will be able to sort of roll that out, quite frankly, too, that will give, you know, our citizens the benefit of having first-rate customer service ultimately over time once they show up at our doors and our counters, and even for those who are in the field like our EMS workers and others that deliver the services of Durham County.
Yes, and I recall a new process that we employed this year was working on getting a citizen survey completed. Again, that was a new thing for the county.
Absolutely. We had the good fortune of partnering with our friends in the city, and under Mr. Bonfield's leadership, who has done some great work in this space around strategic planning and making certain that they've got adequate and up-to-date information around what citizens look for and how they feel about the services that we render. And so we partnered in that process, and we learned some pretty good things about the work that we are doing. The citizens survey, though, I want to say is very critical in respect to the work that we have to do going forward. And while it was the first time, it is our anticipation that we will be doing these every couple of years now going forward. And the reason that it is most important, much like what you have seen in the city of Durham, we will be refreshing our strategic plan on a more routine basis. And that citizens survey data will in fact be used to inculcate part of the strategies that will be necessary to make sure that we get to a better place and get to better outcomes, particularly as it relates to the desires and hopes of these 5 people who sit here at this big desk, and more importantly, the citizens that we serve.
Now, mentioning the strategic plan, again, that is something that's going forward. We're having conversations now, trying to structure the best way to refresh it, if you will. Talk about that, please.
Yeah, so it's important to have a bona fide strategy, once again, in terms of how we go about the business of a refresh. Unfortunately, we are at a spot that we haven't had a refresh of our plan since the plan was instituted, and really cutting-edge organizations, they refresh their strategic plan every couple of years to make sure that it is both relevant and current. And so as a part of what we are trying to do inside Durham County government is to get to that place, and I anticipate that we will get a strategy in place to do so. But to the extent that it has been since 2012, the adoption, 4 years, I think it will be important that we do a pretty good job in the citizens engagement process to make sure that we are getting good feedback from the citizens, so that when we do that refresh, we can indeed set the important priorities that the citizens lay out for us along with our elected officials. And once they set out those priorities, then I think for the most part we have good goal areas. We will need to determine underneath those goal areas what the strategic objectives need to be over the next 18 to 24 months. And those are specific things that we will drive at, and we will measure those things in respect to how well we're achieving in that space. And then from there, hopefully be able to refine our efforts going forward, and as we update in the future, refine and define new objectives to work on in order to in order to solve some of these big challenges that we're working on.
Now, before we move to our next segment, I just wanted to kind of remind our viewers, we're pretty much spent about the last 18 or so months training at least about 2/3 of the organization in program development and managing for results, and we're getting ready to enter the budget process. So for those departments that have sort of completed that process, can you give us a sense of what our budget will partially look like, how it will be different?
Yeah, the budget will change a little bit, and particularly for those first 7 departments that was in the first cohort.
Right.
And so now that they have gone through the training, primarily what you will see is a program-based budget. We should be laying out the cost of those respective programs in ways that demonstrate what it takes financially and resource-wise to run those programs. And in addition to that, we should know how many people are devoted and dedicated to those respective programs. Going forward in the future, that will better position us to be able to sort of manipulate the data and get to some critical analysis that we might need, particularly as it relates to making good decisions around how resources are allocated. In addition to that, all of those programs at this point should have developed the associated metrics that gives us not just what's happening in respect to how many dollars we're spending or the inputs, not just about the workload, but there should be some deeper metrics and measures that will sort of showcase what's going on there in the way of how well those respective programs are meeting the desired outcomes. And so I'm hopeful that as we make this pivot, our community, our board's ready to go down that path, because effectively what it means is it's going to require us to look a little bit deeper at the data to drive decision making in order to help us get to the right, or certainly to better decisions.
We have read about your recent leadership reorganization, and I understand that's a critical part of managing for results. Please explain how this will enhance the overall effectiveness of Durham County government.
I'll be happy to talk about that, Deborah, but before I get into effectively what it means in terms of an overall enhancement, I want to talk about a couple of other things that are extremely important, and that is effectively this. In order to make the kind of headway that we believe we need to make in terms of producing outcomes, it requires three things. You need a good strategic plan, which we have, and you need an implementation strategy for that plan, which is our Managing for Results model that we spent 18 months developing. The last big hurdle, of course, is to make certain that you have the right organizational alignment in order to support that strategy. There's a gentleman by the name of Torben Rick, who is sort of a senior level executive. He works out in the private sector, but he's actually one of the thought leaders in this space around change management. And effectively what Mr. Rick says is this. He says, without alignment, the best strategic plan will never be fully achieved. And so what you can anticipate going forward now that we have a solid strategic plan, a solid implementation strategy, and a solid alignment is three major things. We will have the right responsibility placed in the hands of individuals who can carry out this work at the senior-most level of the organization. We will have the responsibility, the accountability, and essentially the authority to make those critical decisions that need to be made going forward as it relates to how we do our work across this new matrix organization that I've laid out.
So let's dig into that a little bit.
Okay.
I know you've named your new leaders, and you've added a new position. It's called Chief of Staff. So let's start there.
Yeah, so our Chief of Staff position is essentially I kind of dubbed it my organizational bulldog, because that role is subsequently one that has to make sure on a day-to-day basis that things are in fact getting done. This is a big enterprise. We have 2,000 employees. We've got 5 goal areas. We've got 27 different departments. And for the most part, we get a lot of demands, both internally. We get demands from our citizens, from our commissioners. But in order to make sure that those things get done and they get done at a high level, you got to have someone sort of charting those things, paying particular attention to them, timelining them along, and Gantt charting the projects and initiatives out that we're working on, and making sure that that work is in sort of an old way of saying, seen through. And so the Chief of Staff in that role will be sort of the person who will be responsible for taking on that work. Drew Cummings. Drew used to be our assistant county manager, and Drew has stepped up in that space. And as many of our viewing audience know, Drew's been around here in county government for a little while, and subsequently understands and knows the lay of the land. He's well thought of in our community, and just as importantly, a very smart young man who brings a lot of intelligence to his work. Is very well educated, and subsequently it is sort of one of the kind of cutting edge types of thinkers, and not unwilling, should I say, to sort of challenge the traditional, which is essentially what it's going to take. He asks a lot of questions, and I like that because I think that we all have to sort of push each other if we are going to be the best organization that we can be. And so that chief of staff role will be very critical to making certain that we know what we're doing and when things are supposed to get done, and subsequently when things aren't, he has to play the role of the enforcer.
That's right.
And so, and I don't say that lightly, but he's the perfect person for the job.
And so now let's talk about the 5 general managers.
Absolutely, but before I get there, I want to actually refer back to Torben Rick, who I talked about a little bit earlier. And what Torben Rick says essentially is this, is that organizational alignment is the glue for achieving better performance. And so it was extremely important to make certain that we had such alignment as we move forward in trying to achieve those big things for our organization, and more importantly for our community. So as you think about our old organization chart, which was probably about 40 years old, subsequently was laid out in functional areas. And so you had the county manager, and then the 4 functional, with the 2 deputies, and the 4 functional areas were essentially general government, planning and development, public safety, and human services. Now, given that alignment, what we did after we adopted our strategic plan back in 2012 was we appointed department directors and, in some cases, mid-level managers in the organization with the responsibility of carrying out the goal work that needed to be done within the strategic plan. We call those folks goal champions. But I want you to imagine for a minute a mid-level manager going to a department head and saying, okay, today or this week for the next 3 months, we're working on this particular item, and subsequently you need to do da-da-da-da-da. And of course, as you can imagine, that department director's vision or notion might be, well, look, I've got these 5 things or these 10 things that I'm working on here, and I'm doing these for my health board or some citizen request or some commissioner request. And so subsequently, it was hard to create essentially the priorities, and more importantly, to have those 3 critical elements. Those critical elements being responsibility, accountability, and authority. So this leadership reorganization that I have done addresses all 3 of those things, because it places essentially the responsibility at the top of the organization, and those folks at the top of the organization have the responsibility for a specific goal area that they will be working on in order to make sure that there is an eye on the outcomes and the metrics and the data systems and the analytics and all of those things that are important in order to make sure that we do the things that we say that we are in fact going to do. Again, I'll go back to Torben Rick again, who said, without alignment, the best strategic plan will never be fully achieved. And so that's what we're talking about here. So we don't have deputy managers anymore. We have 5 general managers, and those 5 general managers are essentially as follows. Under our community and prosperity goal area, we've taken that goal and we've combined it with goal number 4, which is environmental stewardship. And we now have a general manager for environmental stewardship and community prosperity. And that person is Jay Gibson. Jay comes to us from the town of Chapel Hill. We were so fortunate a little while back to hire Jay as our county engineer. But he came in with a ball of energy, extremely intelligent young man that's just sort of well endowed in the literature and he gets it. I mean, he's just sort of a go-getter, and he brings the kind of energy to the organization that excites me about, you know, the work that we have to do. And I'm delighted that I was able to tap him as a talent to ask him to move into that general management role. And so Jay is the general manager of environmental stewardship and community prosperity. And under his portfolio, of course, he's overseeing the city and county planning operations, the city-county geographic information systems, our city-county inspections department, economic development, county engineering, of course, and the soil and water conservation district, along with the register of deeds. The economic development function is highlighted under Jay's purview because Jay subsequently and I have had some pretty in-depth conversations along with some of our other broader community partners, and we will be paying specific attention to economic development, unlike we've done in the past in light of some of the big challenges that the community is faced with.
Very good.
In addition to that, Deborah, we also now have a general manager for public health and community well-being. And I was so fortunate to have a 43-year veteran of our organization step up into this role, Ms. Gail Harris, who is essentially, well, what can you say? I mean, she's an institution in herself. Gail has been around not just for a long time, but has a really good handle on some of the major health challenges that our community is confronted with. As you know, Gail is, I like to call her award-winning, as you know, our community has been recognized by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for the culture of health. And Gail has been the tip of the spear that has led this work in this space, and subsequently I asked her to step up, and she was willing to do so. Now, Gail in this role is subsequently taking on a dual role, and that dual role will be that of a general manager, which she will oversee the public health, social services, cooperative extension, our veteran services operations. She'll be the liaison to our Alliance Behavioral Services, the mental health operations, and of course the libraries. And in addition to that, you know, she's going to play public health director as well. But there's some key cutting edge work that's going on right now under Gail's purview, working hand in hand with the Duke Health System and our new health chancellor, or should I say the chancellor of the healthcare system at Duke, Dr. Eugene Washington. And there's some really, really sound work going on in that space around population health management. And I'm very excited about the leadership that we have in place at the top of our organization to oversee that health and well-being goal area for all of Durham. In addition to that, we have a new general manager for community and public safety. And I'm delighted to talk about our most recent hire, Jody Miller. Jody is, again, ball of fire, comes to us from Williamsburg, Virginia. Jody has spent an immense amount of time in municipal government, but has a real good grasp and understanding in the public safety space. And subsequently, as Virginia Tech grad, she's very active in the International City and County Managers Association. She's just done a phenomenal job in that space. She's an excellent communicator, got great soft skills. I can't say enough good things about Jody, and again, the energy that she brings to the work. And so I don't know if you can tell or not, but Deborah, I'm very excited about this new team because it was important, as Jim Collins talks about in his work Good to Great, to get the right people on the bus in the right seats. And when you've got the right talent, those type folk manage themselves. And so what it affords me the opportunity to do is to hone in and focus on more of the bigger thinking stuff that we have to do as a community, and think more about strategies and key relationships and partnerships that will be necessary outside government in order to get some of this work done. And so I'm very excited, you know, about what all of these folk bring. I think the last couple GM spots that I want to talk about is essentially our accountable and efficient and visionary government goal area. And so in that space, we now have a general manager of financial affairs, process improvement, and government efficiency. And Claudia Hager, who was here a bunch of years ago as our budget director, I was able to lure her back into this space as our budget director, and subsequently had the good occasion, or opportunity, should I say, to ask her to step up in this space and subsequently take on that leadership role. Claudia brings a wealth of experience as well, not just in local government, but also from higher education. And in that space, she'll be overseeing our finance and budget operations, as well as our information technology systems and shared services, our tax administration, our general services department, along with the Board of Elections. And I've got one last person I'd like to talk about, and I think that you may know them. So, you know, we have a lot of things that go on, obviously, outside of those goal areas respective. And I had to spend an immense amount of time thinking about how to sort of capture those things. And it's everything from the strategic planning work that we're doing. Innovation will become very important as we move forward, because we need to be thinking differently about how we do problem solving. And so there has to be some room within the organization chart devoted to that. There's a traditional public information functions, the legislative services, and then we've added some new youth advocacy and initiatives that are in place, like our MBK work. And of course, you know, there's housing programs, and then the manner in which we, you know, deal with board and constituent requests. And so all of those things needed to fit sort of someplace. And so, and you needed to have leadership there, because otherwise it would have effectively meant that, you know, those things would have been coming to me on a daily basis when I'm trying to spend time out in the community and dealing with some of the bigger planning and strategy issues that I think the organization needs to be focused on. And so we now have the general manager for strategic management, public affairs, innovation, and of course special projects. And I want to thank you here on air for your willingness to accept that role and responsibility, and for sticking with me in this space, because I know that you know, that's a big box with a lot of responsibility, but you're the right person for it.
Well, thank you, sir. And of course, you know, we're happy to continue to serve our residents, and we will make sure that this end of the organization, I see it as a foundational part of the organization,
Absolutely,
is handled well.
There are a couple of things I need to point out, though. Moving in this direction is essentially, what it means is that we have a matrix organization now. And so those 5 general managers will have to rely very heavily upon each other in order to get their work done. And so you'll see more teams being developed inside in order to challenge specific issues that we're confronted with as an organization. Those teams will be sort of cross-boundary and cross-goal teams, depending on where we have to go. And I think that having the right people that has the ability to work together across those respective boundaries to make sure that we can reach synergy is extremely important. Collins talks about it, you know, in great detail about when you're going after trying to create the great organization, you have to determine the who and then the what. I believe that I've had the opportunity over the last year in studying the personalities and the work habits of many of these folks. I've got the right who.
Well, we certainly want to thank you so much for all of the great work you're doing in moving our community in a very different and positive direction. And we look forward to having you come back in a few more months and to continue to update us on our progress.
Thank you.
We want to thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on In Touch. Cheers.